Welcome, learner, to today's deep dive. So if you just look around right now, whether you're, prepping for a strategy meeting on how AI is going to totally upend your industry.
Yeah, or even just watching your kids play and wondering like what conceivable careers will even exist for them in 20 years.
Exactly. You're probably feeling this profound sense of disorientation because the ground is just shifting.
Oh, totally. The 21st century really feels less like a new chapter in history and, well, more like an entirely unscripted game.
Right. And the rules are changing every single morning.
Yeah, we are trying to navigate this landscape where the old maps, they just don't apply anymore. And that disorientation, it's not a personal failing, it's a structural reality.
Which is exactly why we're pulling from some incredibly clarifying source material today. We're looking at excerpts from Yuval Noah Harari's book, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century.
Specifically, we're focusing heavily on the introduction and the first two chapters, which cover disillusionment and work.
Right. And our mission here is to map out this chaos for you without, drowning in information overload. We really want to unpack Harari's core argument that humanity is currently suffering from this massive crisis of meaning.
Yeah, and the author posits that this crisis stems from a very specific collision. Basically, the global liberal story that has, organized human society for decades is fundamentally breaking down.
And it's happening at the exact same moment that two monumental technological revolutions are merging, right?
Exactly. Information technology and biotechnology.
Wow. Okay, so to understand the gravity of that collision, we kind of have to look backward at the political breakdown first. Because Harari builds this on the premise that humans don't actually process the world through, like, facts or numbers or complicated
Why?
equations.
No, not at all. We manage massive, complex societies by believing in simple, overarching stories. They act as sort of the operating system for human cooperation.
The operating system, I like that.
Yeah, and if you look at the timeline laid out in the text, the narrowing of these stories is striking. So let's go back to 1938.
Okay, 1938.
Humanity essentially had three global narratives competing to explain the past and predict the future. You had the fascist story, the communist story, and the liberal story.
So, three distinct operating systems trying to run the global hardware.
Exactly. Then by 1968, in the wake of the Second World War, the fascist story had completely collapsed.
Right.
So society was down to just two options, communism and liberalism. Then fast forward again to 1998, the Soviet Union has collapsed, and it appeared only one narrative was left standing.
The liberal story.
Yep, centered on democracy, human rights, free markets. It was the undisputed winner, the default global mantra. But today, as Harari analyzes the landscape in the source text, we are down to zero.
Down to zero.
Yeah.
It's like we're a civilization experiencing a societal blue screen of death.
Huh, that's actually a great way to put it.
The singular operating system we relied on just crashed. And instead of writing new code, people are desperately hitting the restart button, right? Hoping to boot up nostalgic fantasies.
Yeah, which is why you see voters retreating to nationalism, talking about making their countries great again, just, trying to return to a past that honestly no longer exists.
But wait, I have to ask. If the liberal story has produced the greatest era of peace and prosperity in human history, an era where, as the author notes, famine actually kills fewer people than obesity, why is the global population suddenly abandoning it?
Well, Harari's analysis points to a structural failure in the face of new challenges. The liberal story is fundamentally unequipped to answer the two biggest existential problems of the 21st century.
Which are?
Ecological collapse and technological disruption. Think about how liberalism historically solves problems. Its primary mechanism is endless economic growth.
Right, so if there's social tension or inequality, the liberal answer isn't necessarily to redistribute the wealth, but to just grow the overall economic pie so everyone gets a larger slice.
Exactly. More cars, more houses, more consumer goods. But that endless economic growth relies on finite planetary resources.
Which fuels the ecological collapse.
Precisely. The very mechanism designed to solve human problems is actively destroying the human habitat. And sustaining that constant growth demands the relentless invention of more disruptive technologies.
So the liberal story doesn't just lack the tools to fix these new bugs. Its core programming is actively generating them.
That's what the source argues, yes. Yet the text also points out this really fascinating contradiction. Even as the system breaks down, nobody has engineered a viable replacement.
That's true. I mean, People might vote for populist movements, or politicians might flirt with authoritarian models in Russia or China, or look to fundamentalist religious models. But
But ordinary people are still, quote, voting with their feet.
yeah, migration patterns illustrate this perfectly. You don't see massive waves of global citizens risking their lives to emigrate to Russia or China.
No. People from all over the world are still undertaking dangerous journeys to reach Western liberal democracies like Germany or Canada or the United States.
So the liberal story is profoundly broken, but it hasn't been replaced by a coherent, compelling, global alternative.
Right. We are basically operating in a vacuum.
And that political vacuum isn't just happening in the abstract, it's being violently expanded by the technology itself. Because the liberal system was built to manage a world of steam engines and assembly lines and televisions.
Yeah, it has absolutely no framework for artificial intelligence. And this is the crux of the technological threat outlined in the source.
Okay, let's get into this.
The most pivotal concept we have to grasp is the merger of infotech and biotech. Throughout history, the sciences were largely siloed, and our focus was almost entirely outward.
Meaning we studied the world to manipulate our external environment.
Exactly. But now, computer science and the life sciences are combining. We are gaining the computing power to process massive amounts of biological data, and that gives us the unprecedented ability to hack humans.
Hacking humans, I mean, that usually sounds like a sci-fi thriller, but the text grounds it in an analogy about mosquitoes that completely reframed the threat for me.
Ah, the mosquito analogy is brilliant.
Right. Historically, if a mosquito was buzzing in your ear and keeping you awake, humanity knew how to exert control over the outside world. You could just swat the mosquito.
Or if there were too many, you organize a workforce, build a dam, drain the whole swamp. We mastered external engineering.
Exactly. But if you have an unwanted thought buzzing in your head, keeping you awake at night with anxiety, humanity has been utterly powerless. We have no idea how to simply swat a thought or drain the subconscious.
The inner world has just remained this impenetrable black box, but the merger of infotech and biotech is literally prying that box open.
Wow.
By combining biometric sensors, so monitors for heart rate, blood pressure, brain activity, with algorithms capable of recognizing complex patterns in that data, technology will soon understand our internal biochemical processes better than we understand them ourselves.
So we're moving from manipulating rivers to manipulating the neural pathways of the human mind.
Yes, which introduces an incredibly dangerous variable.
Because when we manipulated the outside world, when we dammed those rivers and cleared those forests to build our modern society, we didn't understand the complex ecological systems we were tampering with.
And we inadvertently triggered an ecological collapse. The author draws a direct parallel here. We are about to begin engineering our internal world with the exact same hubris.
That is terrifying.
If algorithms start manipulating our brain chemistry, curating our attention, killing certain thoughts, or engineering specific emotional states without a flawless understanding of the human psyche.
We could trigger an internal collapse, a systemic breakdown of our mental ecosystem.
Exactly. And that internal hacking directly dictates how you will earn a living, or, frankly, if you will earn one at all. We are looking at a complete upending of the future of work.
Okay, so let's talk about the job market, because this represents a massive historical pivot regarding human value.
Huge. If you look at the great political and social struggles of the 20th century, they were fundamentally about the masses revolting against exploitation.
Right, the working class had leverage because the elites absolutely needed them. You couldn't run a factory or harvest a massive farm or fight a global war without millions of human bodies.
You could be exploited, sure, but your existence was fundamentally necessary to the system.
But now, because of AI and automation, people are staring down a fear that is much more paralyzing than exploitation.
The fear of total irrelevance. The algorithm has no desire to exploit you. It simply doesn't require your input to function.
But wait, I have to push back a little here because haven't we heard this panic before? I mean, during the Industrial Revolution, the Luddites smashed the mechanical looms, terrified of losing their livelihoods.
That's the classic counter-argument, yes.
Right, and yet automation consistently destroyed old jobs only to create entirely new, higher-paying jobs, which raised the overall standard of living. Why does Harari say this specific technological wave breaks that historical pattern?
The distinction lies in what is actually being replaced. In the past, machines competed exclusively with human physical abilities. When a tractor replaced a human's muscle on the farm, that human could transition to a factory floor or later to a service or administrative job because they relied on their cognitive abilities, learning, analyzing, communicating.
Right, humans retained a monopoly on cognition.
Exactly. But this time, AI isn't replacing the muscle. It is competing directly with our cognitive abilities.
Even the cognitive abilities we assume are uniquely, like magically human. The text deconstructs the concept of human intuition, which I found fascinating.
Oh, yeah. Consider a banker assessing whether a nervous borrower is going to default on a loan, or a human driver approaching a crosswalk reading a pedestrian's body language to predict if they're about to step off the curb.
We call that a gut feeling, or intuition. We treat it like an intangible art form.
But it isn't magic. The brain is simply executing a biochemical algorithm.
Oh.
It's taking in sensory data, the slight dilation of the borrower's pupils, the tension in the pedestrian's shoulders, micro shifts in tone of voice, and calculating probabilities based on decades of past experience.
It just happens so fast we don't consciously register the math, so we call it intuition.
Right. And the sobering reality presented in the source is that an artificial intelligence, fed enough data, can be trained to recognize those micro expressions and calculate those exact probabilities with vastly greater accuracy than a human brain.
Because our biological algorithm is running on hardware that evolved to survive on the African savanna, not to process millions of data points in a modern urban environment.
Exactly. And that brings us to the structure of AI itself. We cannot think of artificial intelligence as just a really fast human brain in a metal box.
Right. The text identifies two massive structural superpowers that AI possesses over humans: connectivity and updatability.
Yes. This requires a shift from thinking individually to thinking as a network. The hive mind.
Let's use the driving scenario from the text, because the stats are wild. Roughly 1.25 million people die every year in traffic accidents. And these aren't inevitable tragedies of physics. The vast majority are caused by individual human errors.
Drinking, texting, getting distracted.
Exactly. Now replace those individual human drivers with a network of self-driving cars.
AI vehicles don't function as isolated actors guessing what the other is going to do. They operate as a single connected algorithm.
So if two autonomous cars approach a busy intersection, they communicate their speed, trajectory, and intent instantly. They negotiate the right-of-way in a millisecond, virtually eliminating collisions caused by miscommunication.
And that connectivity feeds directly into the second superpower, updatability, which is perhaps an even greater advantage.
Okay, how so?
Imagine the Ministry of Transport implements a new traffic law or a new hazard is identified on a specific road. You cannot instantly beam that updated protocol into the brains of millions of human drivers.
No, humans require time, retraining, breaking old habits.
But you can push an update to every single autonomous vehicle on the grid simultaneously, in a split second.
Wow. And the healthcare implications of this are staggering too. The text explores the concept of the AI doctor. Today, if a brilliant researcher discovers a new disease variant or a breakthrough treatment, it takes years for that knowledge to filter down.
Oh, easily. Medical textbooks have to be rewritten, doctors attend seminars, practitioners integrate new methods through trial and error.
Conversely, if you have an interconnected network of 10 billion AI doctors, essentially one algorithm monitoring the health of every human on the planet,
The moment a medical breakthrough is verified, you update all 10 billion instances of that AI doctor in a fraction of a second.
every single patient on Earth instantly benefits from the newest medical knowledge.
It's incredible.
It is, and it creates an incredible paradox for you as you navigate this century. This technology threatens to render your professional skills completely irrelevant. Yet it's the exact same technology that could save your life on the highway and deliver world-class, constantly updated medical care to your smartphone for pennies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A villager in an isolated jungle region could receive a more accurate diagnosis from an AI than the wealthiest billionaire can get from top human specialists today.
And if they don't like the IBM doctor, they can just get a second opinion from the Baidu doctor.
Exactly, but it forces us to ask. As the hive mind absorbs data analysis, transportation, and medical diagnostics, what domains actually remain for human beings?
Right? Where are our economic and social bastions?
Well, the author identifies two primary areas that will resist automation much longer than we might expect: caregiving and creativity.
Okay, let's break those down.
So physical caregiving professions like nursing or early childhood education, they require a synthesis of deeply complex skills.
Yeah, fine motor control to manipulate physical objects in unpredictable environments, combined with high-level situational awareness.
And the emotional intelligence to comfort a distressed human being. An AI might diagnose a complex cancer a decade before a robot possesses the physical dexterity and empathetic reading required to, say, gently change a bandage on a frightened child.
So physical empathy remains ours for a while. That's comforting.
It is.
But then there's creativity, the realm of art, music, and writing. I mean, we like to think of human emotion as this sacred, untouchable sanctuary. But the text introduces a twist that shatters even that comfort.
Yeah, the biometric DJ.
Yes. Because if our emotions are fundamentally just biochemical algorithms, then art isn't magic either. It is just a sophisticated manipulation of those biochemical states.
And this is where the merger of infotech and biotech reaches its zenith. An algorithm reading your biometric sensors, your heart rate, skin conductance, oxytocin levels could eventually map your internal emotional landscape perfectly.
It could manipulate your emotions better than Shakespeare or Beyoncé.
Without a doubt. It learns what frequencies, tempos, and narrative structures trigger specific neurochemical releases in your unique brain.
The scenario Harari paints to illustrate this is unforgettable. So imagine you've just gone through a painful breakup. You're totally devastated. The AI DJ in your home system isn't just guessing how you feel based on a generic playlist you clicked. It is actively monitoring your physiological state.
It knows precisely what stage of grief you are experiencing biochemically.
So it dynamically generates a custom musical journey. It engineers your emotional recovery.
Right. It starts by analyzing your biometric stress markers and plays, like an upbeat Bobby McFerrin song to ease you through the denial phase.
Then, as it senses your cortisol rising, it pivots to an aggressive Alanis Morissette track, perfectly matching your anger.
Then it drops the tempo, guiding you safely into the depressive phase with Adele.
But then, to pull you out, it doesn't just play a popular happy song. The algorithm searches its massive database of your life and generates a piece of music incorporating a specific ambient sound or melodic progression tied to a deeply buried, joyful childhood memory.
A memory you don't even consciously recall, but one that your biometric data proves triggers a massive dopamine release.
It can even dynamically edit out a specific note in a song if your heart rate indicates you find it subtly annoying.
It's wild. Now, the immediate counter-argument to this level of hyper-personalization is the fear of the echo chamber.
Right. If an algorithm is perfectly tailoring every piece of art to your existing physiological preferences, wouldn't we lose the magic of serendipity? Wouldn't we be trapped? What about discovering new things?
Harari addresses that directly. The algorithm doesn't have to be a closed loop. Serendipity itself can be coded.
Wait, really?
Yeah, if you want to expand your horizons, you simply program the AI to optimize for exploration by introducing a calculated degree of randomness.
Like setting it to 3% to 8% randomness.
Exactly. So while it primarily curates an environment that keeps you emotionally stable and engaged, it occasionally throws a 19th century Rossini opera at you, or an Indonesian gamelan ensemble, or a K-pop hit.
And it monitors your biometric reaction to this novelty, learns from it, and continually refines your capacity for discovery.
Flawlessly optimizing your serendipity without pushing you into overwhelming frustration.
Okay, let's synthesize the sheer scale of the shift we've mapped out today, because we've covered a lot. We began with the collapse of the global political story, the liberal operating system fracturing because its reliance on endless growth cannot solve and actually accelerates these ecological and technological crises.
Then we examined how the merging of infotech and biotech is turning the tools of science inward, moving from manipulating external environments to hacking human biology and thought.
Right. And we tracked how that internal hacking leads directly to a crisis of irrelevance in the job market. The AI hive mind, using absolute connectivity and instant updatability, outpaces our evolved for the savannah brains.
Replacing not just muscle, but human intuition itself.
And finally, we arrived at the realization that even our final sanctuaries, our emotions, our art, our serendipitous discoveries can be calculated, predicted, and flawlessly curated by algorithms.
It is a staggering reality to process. But there's a final, deeply provocative thought drawn from the very end of the source material that frames the ultimate challenge for the listener.
Let's hear it.
Harari points out that as society grapples with the rise of a massive, useless class, millions of people whose economic and military value has been permanently automated away, governments will be forced to restructure society entirely.
So he discusses new economic models, like universal basic income, the sort of capitalist paradise where your financial survival is ensured, Or universal basic services, the communist paradise where the state provides for all your needs directly.
But the true dilemma goes far beyond economics. The profound question is one of human purpose. For the entirety of human history, our meaning has been inextricably linked to struggle.
The struggle to survive, the struggle to build a career, the struggle to understand ourselves.
Right. So if we arrive at a future where the government guarantees your material survival and an AI perfectly maintains your physical health and autonomous networks handle all logistics and a biometric algorithm flawlessly regulates your emotional state and curates your entertainment.
What will you actually choose to do with your life? How will you define your meaning when the struggle for survival and the struggle for a job are completely removed from the human equation?
When the old stories of struggle are obsolete, what new story will you use to organize your reality?
As we said at the start, the old diagnostic maps are useless. We're walking into a completely unscripted future. But hopefully, mapping out the forces driving this disorientation gives you a solid foundation to navigate what comes next. Thank you for joining this deep dive. Keep questioning the narratives and keep exploring the unknown.